One of my students this morning was like, Mr. Bailey, why aren't you wearing one of your crazy shirts? And I was like, boom, Bob Ross. Isn't that great? It's totally Bob Ross. See? It's like he's hiding in the landscape. Sorry, I had to share that. It was a very, very rewarding moment for me. Okay, so first things first. We're starting to get into the thick of things now. I'm starting to get emails from you guys. People asking questions, wanting to clarify things on this assignment and stuff. That's exactly what I want. Get in touch with me. I am going to go back and try to give everybody who gets in touch with me, especially if you haven't been able to show up in the team session, which, by the way, virtually no one showed up for the team session. Those are a Wednesday at 2:30. If you can't show up for the team session, please let me know. I can either try to reschedule it or I can set up something to where we can kind of communicate off of the team session a little bit more. Because, even if you send me like a pretty nice email once a week, I might be able to justify giving you those points that way instead. And again, of course, the team session points aren't necessarily required, but they will help you get to your participation grade a little bit faster than you otherwise would. So if there's any reason you can't come to the team session, let me know, because I'm trying to figure out what would work best for everybody. I can't promise that there's much I can do, but I can offer stuff like just even trying to clarify a way to do like email correspondence, so you can get some bonus points that way if you want. Also, participation grades. I put in participation grades last week, and you would have thought I detonated a bomb. And I had a lot of emails from people like, why do I only have 10% in the participation grade? To be fair, I understand that pretty much always happens. What the participation grade is in the grade book, as we go along, as you get in and like do discussion stuff every week, I will go in and I will put points in the participation discussion column. The highest grade you can possibly have right now is 15%. And the people who have 15% are the people who showed up to the team session. They got a little bit ahead. But if you've got 10% in that column right now, you're doing fine. That's great. You're on your way to getting a higher grade there. Every week, that grade will go up. You didn't fail anything. I just gave you preliminary points. I know it's scary because it has a big F by it, but everybody's got an F right now. So if you see 10% or 15% there, don't panic. That's where everyone is. And as you post to the discussion forums, as you participate, that grade will raise higher and higher as we go along. So again, I'm clarifying all this, but please keep in mind, if you still have questions, you can bring it up in the team session, or you can email me, and I will be very likely to just give you a few bonus points even for that correspondence. I like to do that sort of thing. I also like caffeinated beverages. Anyway, one more housekeeping thing before I get into the material for today. I'm going to post the final exam. Now, this is actually more the midterm / final exam. The way we do this, and I'm not going to make it available just yet. I'm going to hide it in the background, but I'll probably make it available in the next few weeks. You have to have a test in this class, in the online classes. I don't like to make our exams very weighted. They don't contribute too much to your grade, because honestly, what should count for the grade in here is the discussion posts and the papers, right? That's where most of the work is going. And the test is typically just a writing test, a sample timed writing thing. It'll have a couple of random prompts, stupid stuff like describe your favorite vacation, or should marijuana be legalized? Normally I ban that topic, but we'll talk about that later. It'll be something like that. And I expect you to write, 4 to 5 paragraphs in an essay. And I think I give it about 60 minutes. I grade these looking for some specific behaviors that I teach throughout the semester. I don't tell you what they are, because if anything, these tests are meant to tell me if I'm doing my job. So if you're absorbing the stuff I want you to absorb, it really shouldn't be any problem as we go through this. I also try not to fail students on this test for small things like spelling and even some bits of punctuation. Since it's a timed test, I just go ahead and assume that there's going to be some issues with it, right? Anything that's timed is upping the difficulty up like several degrees. So unless it's completely incomprehensible, you'll do fine. It's not, this test is not something that I use to, like, conk you over the head with. The real function of this test is to verify your identity. That's why it's delivered through ProctorU. Now, ProctorU, you definitely need to have some conversations. If you've never used ProctorU before, you have to install it, and you have to have a web camera because they need to be able to see your face and see your ID. And it's one of the ways that we get a grade on the books that verifies that the person you say you are is the person who is taking the course. So that's the function of all this. Now, I'll let you know when that goes live. Now, it says it's midterm/final. There is only one test, and you can choose to take the test around the midterm or the final. Like, it's your choice when you take it. It's open throughout the semester. It's not two tests. It's only one. It counts as both the midterm and the final. If you want to take this around midterm or earlier when it's available, you can, and then you're done. If you want to wait till the final exam period, you can do that as well. I wouldn't recommend it because ProctorU is a very kind of finicky thing, and sometimes students get a little confused with it. I say it's finicky. I don't want you guys to think that I'm insulting ProctorU at all. It's a good program, but just like everything else, it can sometimes be a little hard to use when you first start. I'm going to get in trouble if I keep doing stuff like this. ProctorU is great, but it doesn't matter what program you're using. There can be some kind of like usability issues, right? It can be confusing, and you can end up in a situation where you're kicked out of the test early for something like you weren't particularly aware of. So honestly, get in and take it early so we can get those issues ironed out. So keep that in mind. If you're in a situation at the end of the semester and you're having trouble getting on, there's not much I can do to help you. So I think that's all three of my housekeeping things up. I'm going to, pretty consistently talk about stuff like this in the videos. It's one of the reasons I like using YouTube and recording it live is, always going for that I have a teacher effect. I've gotten emails. I like to respond to them in the videos, right? I've also had some questions about how to write this paper. And those are pretty good questions. Some of you, and this is something that always happens, and it's always surprising to me, some of you guys don't feel a very good connection to the material with like the TV tropes. I've tried to give you some alternatives to that, and maybe I need to think about that a little bit more, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be a TV trope. Now, I can see this being really confusing with that discussion post I gave you last time where you were supposed to connect it to the TV trope website. If you can't connect your particular subject, like let's say it's a personal one, right? If you can't connect it to a TV trope, you can always just sort of do what I call a focus free write and just try to give me just like hammer out an intro for your paper. Ultimately, the discussion post stuff, I go in and I glance over it. You don't always necessarily have to hit all the points in the assignment in order to get the credit. Now, if it's something really, really important in the discussion, which it will be today, I'm going to give you more direction to specifically what I want you to do. The TV tropes thing, that was a fun little experiment. And I could see that being really, really confusing, the way that I put all that together. So if the discussion question from last week was just kind of like, don't necessarily, blow your brain up trying to answer that question. You can kind of just sort of do a sort of preliminary paragraph of the paper, and that will be fine for last week's discussion. I keep thinking of more housekeeping stuff. We might just have to do nothing but housekeeping today, which sometimes is okay to do. Also, I wanted to throw this out there for everybody. We have a embedded librarian in this class. He works here at Coastal Pines. He has a little discussion forum that he's created in the discussion board. And he's going to be helping you guys with a lot of the research stuff that we're going to be getting into. And I really want to try to get into that sooner rather than later. We have a tendency to just kind of sort of shove research in at the end of the semester. And research is a pretty complicated topic. And trying to just sort of load all that stuff up at the very end doesn't really work very well a lot of the time. It's problematic. But anyway, go check out his forum that he's posted. He's trying to help you out with some of the jump the shark stuff. And I'm sure he's got some really, really cool resources there beyond what I posted with the TV tropes thing. So let's talk a bit about what I wanted to do today, because I would like to mention the primary stuff. So for me, we're going to talk a little bit about grammar. We're going to do this kind of slow because I've already wasted 10 minutes today just chatting on and on and on about, technical stuff with the class. When it comes to grammar and actual, sentence level stuff with the teaching of writing, I prefer not to obsess with correctness or incorrectness because that has a tendency to choke off student writing pretty badly. When you start talking about people's language skills in regard to whether they are correct or incorrect, it causes lots of problems in a classroom. I like to think of it instead as more, I'm teaching you tips on how to quickly strengthen your writing and get more out of it, right? Now, when I'm in the face-to-face classroom, I can typically go after these little writing tips and I can just bloviate about this stuff and just go on and on and on and on about pure nonsense for like an hour. Let me tell you, it's entertaining. But for the online environment, I don't think anybody really wants that. I think most people want to get straight to the core of what it is we're discussing and move on from there. Do you guys always want to be watching 20 to 30-minute videos? I don't think I would. I mean, I think I'm a pretty charming guy on YouTube. I mean, I wear awesome shirts, right? But that only goes so far. So what we're going to do, we're going to do a really condensed version of the lesson that I give in class when I bloviate, basically. Now, I got this piece of paper, and I'm not sure if it's going to show up on camera very well. I might need to get like a marker or something, but we're going to try it out. So one of the first things that I focus on for a writing tip is verbs. Now, verbs, I don't want to go over all the parts of speech like I usually do. Let's just focus on verbs for a minute. We all know what verbs are, right? If not, they are words that show action. Run, jump, puke, discombobulate, say, sleep, shoot, kapow, right? Now, normally I kind of drag this out and I get the class to list verbs for like 30 minutes. And it's very obvious at this point what the point I'm trying to make. There's lots and lots and lots and lots of verbs in the English language. It's an absolute menagerie of them, right? It's like a zoo of verbs. But one of the things that I illustrate with this is that students almost never bring up the verbs that are the most common in the English language because they're not really very forward in our minds as even being verbs. They don't really register that way. And the verbs that I'm pointing to would be, and I'm just going to go ahead and give them to you rather than do this dance I always do, is, and I'm writing them down. I'll also make sure to include these in a list below this video. And that is, are, was, were, been, being, am, and be. Okay, this was dumb as hell. I'm such an idiot. Anyway, I'll be sure to write these up in a way that it's actually legible, right? So these words are verbs, but the action that they show is no action at all. It is the action of existing, right? We could get into a whole bunch of stuff just about the weirdness of trying to define these words, but really all you really need to know is that they are counterintuitive for the function and form of what a verb is supposed to be. So why is this important? These words are actually really bad for you. Passive verbs, which is what we call these, introduce a lot of grammatical complexity. They take away a lot of the descriptiveness of your writing. If you're constantly using these words, then you're only thinking about like the essence of things, not the action that goes into things. And you're missing out on a great deal of stuff that you could be writing about, right? A lot of things are hidden behind the assumptions we make when we use these words over and over again. To make it even worse, like I said, these things introduce a lot of grammatical complexity. I used to do a lot of tutoring at Georgia Southern University and Armstrong Atlantic State University before they were swallowed up by Georgia Southern. I'm very bitter about that. Armstrong Atlantic State University was my alma mater, and I was very proud of it. And now it doesn't exist anymore, and it's just like a little piece of me just like broke in half and just died. Anyway, is way too middle of the afternoon to be upset about things like this. Anyway, so when I used to tutor for the writing centers, we had a lot of situations where students would come in needing remedial help with writing tests that they were supposed to pass when they were sophomores in college, and dealing with complex grammatical issues. And this wasn't just people that you would see typically at the university. This was a lot of people who were coming in from like other countries, like student study abroad programs, people who had English as a second language. People would come into this program with some pretty complicated grammatical issues. And for someone who's never taught grammar before, it can be very overwhelming to help someone who is starting out from the situation of actually struggling to be able to communicate, being able to put their words on the page in a way that it can be read. And one of the things that I discovered through constantly working with these students over and over and over and over again is they were too reliant on these words. This is just a really strange thing. If you can cut down on those words in your writing, you actually remove a great deal of unnecessary complexity from the writing. Words that are very, very loaded with passive verbs have a tendency to kind of sort of like double back on themselves and lose the point. And they're difficult to punctuate even for someone like me who's very comfortable with that type of thing. It makes the writing easier to manage. A little more choppy, but choppy writing is actually, in my opinion, a little bit preferable at this level, as opposed to like long-winded sentences that just kind of sort of lose themselves anyway. And I know I'm on a beaten path here, but just follow me because I want to sound smart for a minute. If you guys have ever read the author Ernest Hemingway, his sentences are very compact, very straight to the point. They don't go in a lot of like weird rabbit holes like I do. He's very there's an old joke about how did the chicken cross the road. Hemingway would answer that riddle as alone in the rain to die. I love Hemingway. In any case, you guys get the point here. There's a lot of benefit to having shorter sentences that just kind of like easily managed, but connect in ways that are kind of very sequential. Now, here's what I want you to do. It might be too late to expect you guys to really do a lot with this going into the Jump the Shark paper. And the Jump the Shark paper may not lend itself to this very well anyway. But at the same time, I'm the teacher and I get to tell you what to do. So I want you guys to think about this. Now, you do not have to eliminate these words. If you eliminate these words completely, you end up sounding kind of like a weird alien. But one of the other things that's interesting about these tips and about English itself is you can theoretically eliminate these words. It makes you sound kind of weird, but the language itself functions completely well. You can even, talk about the existence of things in passive concepts without those verbs. These verbs are actually kind of weird in a lot of other countries. There's been studies done about the psychological effect of these words and how common they are in the English language. Like some psychiatrists actually think that one of the reasons we have so much trouble saving money in English-speaking countries is because English is very reflexive. It thinks very much about the way things are in the now, as opposed to like thinking about how things will be later, right? We're very focused on like the experience of the now and the experience of being, as opposed to what will be, which is, okay, I'm getting philosophical now. Let's boil this down to something you can do immediately. And this is something we're going to follow up with on Wednesday. I want you guys to write 5 sentences. About how cute my dog is, which you can see him in the thumbnails of these YouTube videos when you go back and look at them. So go back and look at the thumbnails. And you can write about how cute my dog is. And you can also write about how awesome my shirts are. I am such a vain piece of poop, but that's what I do, right? That's how I operate. In any case, play around with this concept today because we're going to do something much more developed with this next time, and finally sort of tease out the final sort of concepts of this jump the shark paper. I also just realized I never posted the rubric for this. I'll go today and make sure that the Dropbox is open for the jump the shark paper, which is due Tuesday, and make sure there's a nice rubric attached to it. And we're going to follow up on this concept a little bit on Wednesday. Like I said before, all those weird housekeeping issues, please let me know if you can't or are having trouble getting to the team sessions. I want to find a way to help you get those bonus points. We're just going to kind of leave it here for now. I have been going on and on and on about absolute mindless stuff for way too long, and I'll get that rubric out, so if you guys, just in case you guys have any issues or confusion with the jump the shark paper, you can ask. Also, let me say something real quick. I can tell I'm having some anxiety about the jump the shark paper. The first paper I very much handled kind of with kid gloves. This is the first paper. This is kind of how I determine where you guys are. I give you something kind of fun. I give you something silly. It's not something that I'm going to go after with like a butcher's knife, right? I'm going to, keep in mind that I'm giving you something preliminary. So try not to stress too much on this one. If this is a complete and total disaster, I'm going to be a lot nicer on this one than I will be for some of the other papers later. So on that note, I think that's all I've got for today. I'll be looking to see what you guys are posting in the discussion forum because I need an ego boost. So please tell me how awesome my shirts are. And I'll see you guys on Wednesday.